In this video, we'll be talking about one of the questions that I get asked the most, which is how do you keep your subject in focus while moving? I'm going to give you my top 5 tips for keeping your subject in focus, so let's get into it. Tip number 1 is to use an external monitor. Most cameras come with really small screens that make it really hard to tell if your subject is in focus. For me, I use a 7-inch monitor on my Red, and that really helps me to see what's in focus and what's not. So at the very least, I would go with a 5-inch monitor, but I've had a 5-inch monitor and I still struggled at times keeping my subject in focus, so getting a 7-inch monitor really helped with that. And for the suggestions of which monitor to buy, you can go to my kit.co page and see what I suggest there. Tip number 2 is to turn on focus peaking. Focus peaking is a feature that allows you to easily tell what's in focus and what's not in focus. And most cameras come with it, but if yours doesn't, pretty much every external monitor out there comes with it. Some will even allow you to change the intensity and color of your focus peaking, so I definitely recommend using that. Tip number 3 is to practice at maintaining the distance between you and your subject. Even with years of experience, there are still some shots that are difficult for me to keep my subject in focus. In those cases, I communicate with the subject and we basically choreograph exactly where they're going to be in the shot so that I know exactly where I have to be in order to maintain the exact distance from them and keep them in focus. Some shots you may have to redo until you nail it, and that's okay, but practice makes perfect. Tip number 4 is to increase your aperture. This may not always look the best, but increasing your aperture just a bit can still be super helpful. I've been on several shoots where I've been wanting to shoot at a shallow aperture of 1.4, but I found it basically impossible to keep my subject in focus the whole time, so I increased the aperture to around a 2.2, and it actually helped a lot without completely getting rid of the background blur. So even increasing your aperture in small segments can help get your subject in focus. And finally, tip number 5 is to shoot with a wide lens. With wide lenses, even when you're shooting at a shallow aperture, it's way easier to keep everything in focus. So if your subject is running and you need to run backwards, I would say that it would almost be impossible to keep them in focus unless you're shooting on a wide lens. Again, wide lenses may not always look the best for the shot that you're trying to get, but putting on even a slightly wider lens can really help get them in focus. And if you film a lot of interviews with people who are moving around a lot, it would maybe be in your best interest to get a camera that has good autofocus with face detection or eye detection like any of the new Canon cameras or Sony cameras. They all have great autofocus capabilities and could really help you if you continue to have issues with it. But that's it for this video. I hope these suggestions are helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.